Good morning, members-elect. We'll begin our proceedings today with a prayer, and I'll call upon Mr. Blake, please, to lead us in prayer.
O God, may your spirit and guidance be in us as we work for the benefit of all our people, for peace and justice in our land, and for the constant recognition of the dignity and aspirations of those whom we serve. Amen.
Amen. Good morning, members-elect. My name is Tim Mercer. I'm the clerk of the Northwest Territories Legislative Assembly, and until such time as you have selected a speaker, it falls upon me to preside over your deliberations today and until the 25th of October. I'm joined at the table today by Deputy Clerk Glenn Rutland to my right and Deputy Clerk Kim Wickens to my left. On behalf of the staff of the Legislative Assembly, I want to take this opportunity to formally congratulate each of you on your recent election to the 19th Legislative Assembly. This is an historic gathering. For the first time in the history of the Northwest Territories, and indeed the history of our country, the residents of the Northwest Territories have elected a gender-balanced Legislative Assembly. The United Nations has identified 30% as the critical threshold of representation for women to have a significant and lasting impact on the policy decisions and outcomes of government. The 18th Legislative Assembly set a goal of achieving this 30% threshold by 2027. As a result of your efforts, we have broken through and surpassed that threshold 8 years ahead of schedule. One of the fundamental aspects of consensus government is that all 19 members, regardless of the positions they eventually hold in this place, have a meaningful and active role to play in setting the priorities for an incoming Legislative Assembly. Of course, this doesn't mean that all of your individual priorities will ultimately form part of the overall priorities of the 19th Assembly. After all, priorities are about making tough choices. But each of you has an equal role to play in determining what those priorities will ultimately be. Today is the second step in the priority setting process. The first step, of course, was the election campaign that each of you have successfully come through. Today is the time to speak not only to your future constituents, but also to your new colleagues in the Legislative Assembly, and indeed all the people of the Northwest Territories. The next step in the priority setting process will be a public meeting of Northern, Indigenous, and community government leaders to be held at the Tree of Peace Friendship Centre in Yellowknife on October 17th. According to the schedule you've adopted yesterday, your priorities will be released to the public on your first formal sitting day, October 25th, 2019. Once established, it will fall to the newly appointed cabinet to build a mandate or an action plan to implement these priorities over the next 4 years and beyond. Members-elect, the questions that you have been asked to speak to today are as follows. Where would you like to see the Northwest Territories at the end of your 4-year term? Where would you like to see it in 10 years? What specific actions do you feel the 19th Legislative Assembly should take to achieve this vision? Today's meeting is open to the public and is being broadcast on the Legislative Assembly television network as well on various social media outlets. Your proceedings will be interpreted into the following languages. On Channel 2, the Clicho language. On Channel 3, Chipewyan. Channel 4, South Slavey. Channel 5, North Slavey. Channel 6, Inuvialuktun. Channel 7, Inuktitut, and Channel 8, French. To listen in English, please leave your headsets set to Channel 1. You have agreed to limit your speeches today to 15 minutes. And there's no need to use all of this time, and I will not interrupt you if you go beyond the 15 minutes. However, I do ask that you be mindful of the number of members who wish to speak today and the limited time available to us. I would ask that when you deliver your speeches, you please stand. We will take a break at about 10:30 a.m. this morning and break again for lunch at noon, resuming at 1 p.m. I expect we will be finished by no later than 4 p.m. today. Members, we have pages in the chamber today to assist you with delivering messages to one another, transferring documents, and if you need your water glasses refilled, they will assist you with that as well. You have agreed to make your presentations today in alphabetical order by constituency name. This means that we will commence with the member-elect for Deschaux, Mr. Bonnet Rouge. Following Mr. Bonnet Rouge, we will go in alphabetical order by constituency name, but we may need to jump around a little bit as certain members need to be away from the chamber today to attend a judicial recount that is taking place off-site. Thank you, members-elect. We're now ready to proceed. Mr. Bonnet Rouge, the floor is yours.
Good morning to all my fellow members and to the legislative staff and to the pages also. Let me first congratulate all MLA-elect members of this Assembly, and I look forward to a unified and collaborative approach to governing the Northwest Territories for the next 4 years. To my Dead Cho riding constituents, a huge messy cho for instilling your trust in me to be a member of the Legislative Assembly for the next 4 years. A big messy cho to my partner and family for your unwavering support during the campaign period. It was a tough road, and I am forever grateful to set a course for the future of my grandchildren and future generations. Regarding the GNWT Indigenous relationships, I want to share a vision with you, a vision of meaningful dialogue and continuous collaboration with all the Indigenous groups of the Northwest Territories to chart the future of the territory for economic prosperity. Only with these partnerships will we realize the prosperity required to build a strong workforce that creates self-esteem and self-sufficiency for all the people of the Northwest Territories. One of the ways is to settle any and all outstanding land claims in the Northwest Territories and not make this task unachievable and unrealistic. We have to remember we are on Indigenous territory. The new government of the 19th Legislative Assembly can create this path by harnessing and developing this vision. All governments in Canada and around the world will be watching with envy of this precedent-setting vision. This is the vision I have, and I encourage all my colleagues to make steps to this goal within the life of this Assembly. Merci. Regarding education reform, reform is introducing a better method or course of action. As leaders, we have always stated education is important so we can have the good education and skills to become doctors, lawyers, engineers, and such. That has always been the dream of our small communities. Sadly, for a majority of those students, that is unachievable. It is so disheartening to see the sad look on the faces of the students who cannot aspire to meet their goals and dreams for higher education. Even for the basic trades entrance exams, our students cannot meet the basic requirements. I believe as leaders, parents, teachers, and the government as a whole, we are failing to discuss the educational requirements that is required of our students to attain higher education and to at least meet some of their expectations to advance to post-secondary institutions. How is this reform achievable? We need to review how the 3 R's are being delivered at the early ages. This may require going into the small communities to discuss with the educators, students, district education authorities, and the community. I would also like this to be completed during the life of this Assembly. Healthcare. During my door-to-door interactions with Indigenous people, I am constantly being reminded of the second-class treatment they receive at the hands of healthcare professionals, whether they be doctors or nurses. Perhaps it is not only the Indigenous people, but they are the most prevalent group, as most of our people are submissive and passive and do not question authority. This may stem from the residential school era and syndrome. Far too often, they hear comments such as, "You're a treaty, so you get your medication and care for free." Those are the comments that people are getting, and this is highly inappropriate statement to be made by a healthcare professional. Also, the constant misdiagnosis of patients is also prevalent in our small communities. Patients have been going to the health centers for the same ailment at least 3 to 4 times and are sent home with pills to ease the pain. People have had near-death experiences because of this situation and are medevaced when their diagnosis becomes unbearably painful. what should be happening is if a diagnosis is not known, then they should be sent out to see a specialist, and most times this is in Edmonton. I would like to see us, as the 19th Assembly, fix this situation before more of our people become casualties of continued misdiagnosis. Housing. The NWT Housing Corporation's mandate is to administer and provide affordable housing to First Nations of the Northwest Territories, including rental housing. The federal government had a fiduciary responsibility to First Nations to provide free housing. I believe the onus is now on the GNWT to provide that free housing to First Nations, as this responsibility has now been devolved to the GNWT. I would like this to be on the agenda for upcoming leadership meetings with Indigenous governments for discussion and possible solutions. I also note that the NWT Housing Corporation's current rent scale is set and determined from a tenant's last year's tax return amount. Tenants are now being coerced into signing over their Canada Revenue Agency tax return to the NWT Housing Corporation, and you have to do that in order to get into a unit. Isn't this barbaric and against a person's basic human rights, not to mention the loss of dignity and self-esteem? How do we allow this as a government in this day and age? Surely a corporation such as the NWT Housing Corporation can set basic rent scales without the intrusion of people's basic human rights to privacy of tax returns. Let's have a review to set that right. Traditional economy initiatives. Northern grown produce to combat the high cost of living and supplementing traditional foods. The GNWT needs to look at traditional economies to increase employment and produce northern products and foods. I believe the federal and territorial governments give tax exemptions to mining companies until the amount of their investment is forgiven. They are also given a low tax rate. I believe it could be as low as 5%. They say mines create jobs, but most mine employees are not northerners. Why can't the GNWT put some of those exemptions into non-renewable resources like food production? The federal government has the Nutrition North subsidy program to subsidize retailers to bring healthy, nutritious foods at high cost of transporting into the communities, thanks to the carbon tax. We are hearing that the program isn't working as it should. Why can't the GNWT develop a plan to have northern harvested food products sold in the northern stores? This will create jobs, cut transportation costs, and provide healthy northern foods. The GNWT can look into developing a subsidy program to subsidize harbors to produce northern foods. This will help all northerners, and maybe we can even export the northern produce foods, must-see. In closing, I again congratulate all the members and look forward to our collaborative approach to govern the Northwest Territories for the next 4 years. Masi Cho.
Thank you, Mr. Bonnet Rouge. I'll next call upon the member-elect for Great Slave, Ms. Knockleby.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me here today. I would like to thank the residents of Great Slave for electing me and putting their faith in me for the next 4 years. I first wanted to take a moment to acknowledge the efforts of several groups and several individuals who have made it possible for myself to be here today, particularly the status of women, my predecessors who have gone ahead of me, who made sure that there was encouragement and workshops and words of advice so that those of us that were considering this as an option pulled the trigger and made the decision to run. I wouldn't be here without any of them, and they need to know that this just didn't happen overnight, and it was the culmination of years and years of efforts and hard work by many individuals. And I also want to thank the allies, the males that supported us in getting us here. Nothing like putting us on the spot day 2 to be televised for my first ever speech to be made in the House. So I will say I'm a little bit nervous, so you'll have to forgive me for that. Obviously, while I ran, one of my major planks of my platform was the economy. That's not to say I don't believe that social issues and other issues that are facing the GNWT are important. However, that being said, if we don't have any money to pay for anything, we aren't going to be going anywhere as a territory. We all know the diamond mines are set to close within the next decade, and we need to work our best to expand the life of those mines to ensure that we continue to have an economy to work on while we build our sustainable, diverse economy parallel to the diamond mining or the resource extraction industry. We need to stimulate our exploration sector by the completion of key infrastructure projects. For me, that includes the Slave Geologic Road, the Tolston Hydro expansion, the Mackenzie Valley Highway. As we face climate change and climate uncertainty going forward, we're going to leave our communities stranded. If we don't start to build our all-weather road system and increase the reliability of our transportation system, we're going to be in trouble. I know there's a huge amount of security that comes from the ability to decide that you're allowed to leave. When that cost of leaving is $2,000 to fly out, you're going to be in trouble. I understand that roads can create issues. There's definitely an environmental impact for things like these infrastructure projects that I would like to see done. Now, however, that being said, we can do work and we can build infrastructure in a sustainable manner, and we can do it with the best and highest of environmental standards and regulations. We have a great environmental regulatory system in Canada, in the Northwest Territories. So while it's not realistic to say that we're not going to build anything going forward. Our economy has been based on mining in the past, and it is what is continuing to feed our families at the moment. I would love to see more of an expansion of tourism. Now, however, tourism jobs don't pay the same as mining jobs. And at the end of the day, nobody wants to come back from a service job at the mine where they're making $30 to $40 an hour to work at a hotel in Yellowknife for $14. This is a reality. I think this is something that we have to face. Another area where I think that we need to be looking, as our mining sector is declining, is we need to be looking at our remediation and reclamation sector. We need to be lobbying the federal government to ensure that the jobs and work created by the Giant Mine Remediation Project are staying in the Northwest Territories. Most of that work is being done by Southern companies. As the construction management contractor said, no one up here has the capability of doing it. Well, my understanding was 5 years ago, that job or that project was to create northern capacity and capabilities. To throw our hands up now and say that's not possible, I don't think is fair. It's $1 billion cleanup. Why aren't we getting more of that pie? Another area I would really like to see the expansion or see develop in the next 4 to 10 years is the Polytechnic University. I'm not going to sit here and say it should be a revamping of Aurora College. I have no idea in that area, and I would definitely want to become more informed in that. Now, however, I do think that we have amazing permafrost scientists, we have amazing engineers, we have amazing geologists in the north. We should be utilizing those people, that talent, and leading the way in climate change research and permafrost science. Yukon College is already in the process of transitioning to a university, so we need to be in the forefront of that education sector. We also need to be creating this northern infrastructure so we're a player in the Arctic economy. Both Nunavut and the Yukon are booming. Both of them are set to have population increases. I believe Iqaluit's going to double in the next 10 years. They're building roads, they're building mines, they're building a road down into the Kitikmeot. We need to build our road to connect to that because eventually there's going to be ports on the Arctic Ocean. If we can access those ports, that's going to help for our economy a lot better. One of the things that's also affecting our economy in the north is the uncertainty of the Northwest Territories. A huge factor in that is the unsettled land claims. It's also been the conduct of our government as well. We're not seen to be a stable, reliable place to invest money. If they can go elsewhere where they don't have the cost of doing business like they do here, plus the uncertainty of not knowing where we're going to be in the next 5 years, we would have more investment in the north. To do so, we do need to offer better infrastructure so that the mines can do business at a cheaper rate. I'm not sure about the taxation issues that my colleague brought up, and I definitely think we need to ensure that the mines are paying their fair share as they extract our resources and ensuring that those jobs do stay in the north for northerners. However, I don't think it's realistic to say we aren't going to be mining in the next 10 to 20 years. We just need to ensure we're doing it right. I have worked a lot in contaminated sites. I've worked at Giant Mine. I believe I've had some health issues as a result of working at Giant Mine. So if there's anybody who does see the impacts of mining gone wrong, it's myself. And that is one of the reasons I'm happy to be here, is because I do feel like I can offer that lens on what needs to be done so that we're doing it in the right manner. As I went door to door, one of the key huge things for me, and it's not an area I was super exposed to in my profession, was the social issues facing Yellowknife. Obviously, and in the north, this shouldn't just be Yellowknife-centric. Obviously, as I've traveled around to different communities, I see the poverty. We're a very, very have and have-not territory. And this is really disturbing to me. One of the things that I did hear at the door a lot of times, and not to diss the residents of Great Slave, however, was there was a sense of disconnect, I think, between people in Yellowknife and what is actually happening in the rest of the territory. I hope that I would like to work hard to be a bridge towards showing the communities that we are not going to be a Yellowknife-centric government, that we are going to take care of everybody, because we're only as strong as our weakest community. And if we are having the issues that we're having in places outside of Yellowknife, then that hurts Yellowknife as well. It's all a drain on our system. So we need to ensure that every person within the territory is healthy, that every person has the same opportunity to move forward. Education is a big one. As engineers, we often talk, how do we get more Northern and Aboriginal students to take engineering? And the answer is, we don't know. We look at the education system, and I can't even fathom how a child from a community would make it into an engineering program anywhere in the South. And that's another reason why I do think the Polytechnic is a good way for us to go, and continuing along with the trades programs that we already have and keeping those strong. However, if we can have a program or something within the north that allows northern students to have that bridge where it makes it a lot easier for them to go to school, where they're not all of a sudden, I found myself as a child going into Vancouver to go to university overwhelming, and I came from a city of about 130,000 people in the south. So for me to go to a big city, it was overwhelming. I cannot even imagine what it would be like to be a child from a community trying to go to Calgary or Vancouver for the first time at the age of 18. We're setting them up for failure. We have a two-tier system there, it appears to me. Again, not something that I would profess to have huge amounts of knowledge on. However, I think it is something that really does need to be addressed. We're failing a lot of people in our territory. So that being said, I think we have a lot of challenges ahead of us. As I went door to door, I recognized how little I actually know. And how much I have to learn in order to do this job better. I'm grateful for my colleagues here, because I feel like already, even in one day, they've taught me a lot, and I know that I'm going to continue to learn from all of you and grow. And I already can feel that we have a good collaborative group of people here. I truly believe we're all here for the right reasons. We all want to see things move forward in this territory. We've been spinning our wheels, and I think that it's time for that to stop. And I'm looking forward to being part of the solution. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Knockleby. We're two speeches in, and we've left some time on the clock, so that's unusual for newly elected politicians and returning politicians, and maybe a sign of things to come. And again, I think it's just fine if you're not using the entire time. One of the themes of transition this time around was to get started with the politics very, very early. So I do apologize to those who are feeling the pressure for making their first speech here today on only their second, or in some cases their first day in the legislature. But so far you're doing fantastic, and try not to be too nervous. In a few months this will seem very comfortable and very old hat. So congratulations to both our newly elected members so far. Next, I'm going to call upon the member-elect for Yellowknife South, Mr. Rocky Simpson. Hay River South, my apologies. Not the first time I've made that mistake, hopefully the last.
Thank you. I'm very pleased to be here today, and would like to thank the residents of Hay River South for allowing me to represent them in this 19th Legislative Assembly. I also look forward to working with all the elected members, both respectfully and cooperatively. I think that we can maybe change things if we all get along and work to a common goal, which is to do the best for the people of the NWT. Prior to starting, I would like to just, I guess, bring attention to an accident that happened on Great Slave Lake where there's 4 fishers lost. And I'd just like to mention their names. Stacy Linnington, Daniel Coutre, Michael Coutre, and Jason Fulton. There's been ongoing searches over the last week and a half for the men, and I hadn't talked to anybody today, so I'm not sure where they're at with that. But I'd just like them to know, and our families to know, that our prayers and our thoughts are with them. And it's tragic. It happens, and the fishing industry is a tough industry. Okay, as I went door to door, I think I knocked on about 400 doors. Talked to many of the residents about issues that mattered to them, and a common theme appeared with respect to those issues. The most common issue raised was access to health care in the community. Residents want that issue addressed immediately. Residents are concerned with the routine absence or shortage of doctors. This has resulted in long wait times and in some cases to the detriment of the patients. It has resulted in patients being forced to travel south to seek timely medical services. This shortage limits appointment opportunities, diagnosis of illnesses, and emergency care. Although this is a common issue throughout Canada, it should not prevent us from finding workable and long-term solutions to address it in both Hay River and the Northwest Territories. How we address it has more than likely been reviewed and discussed many times in this House. Therefore, what we now need is action. The Hay River Health Authority staff are second to none, but without doctors, they are limited in services they can provide. One option that was thrown out there is to amalgamate the Hay River Health Authority with the Territorial Health Authority. But there again, the Territorial Health Authority have their own set of issues as well. Whatever the solution is, the staff of the Hay River Health Authority and the residents of Hay River must be engaged and have a say in the direction we need to take to address this issue. Another issue, item that came up, was the economy. Very important for south of the lake and I think the smaller communities down the valley. Yellowknife has the luxury of diamond mines and government infrastructure and bureaucracy to provide the long-term employment and business opportunities it needs. What Hay River needs, what the South Slave needs, and what the communities along the Mackenzie need is some form of economic diversification and some major infrastructure projects to ensure that there's employment and business opportunities to keep people employed. Hay River is situated on the fringe of the opportunities enjoyed by Yellowknife. We have seen jobs move to Yellowknife. We have seen contracts for infrastructure work go to southern firms while our local contractors sit on the sidelines and watch. Our northern workforce sits on the sideline unemployed. Our local suppliers watch as truckloads of material are brought in from the south. Our suppliers of accommodations watch as numerous RV trailers roll into job sites to avoid paying the local accommodation. We need to look for opportunities in our community. We need to identify resources that we have immediate access to. In the 18th Assembly, a number of strategies were developed. A fishing strategy, an agricultural strategy, and a manufacturing strategy were developed. We have to seriously look at those strategies in collaboration with the producers and identify how we can action them to the benefit of the people, not only in Hay River, but for the NWT as a whole. Another area that is in our backyard is forestry. Due to land claims and being unsettled, access to that industry is limited. However, during the 18th Assembly, they did something positive in the purchase of the assets of NTCL. It was a good decision. MTS has provided continued employment in Hay River while providing a very essential service to the communities in the Northwest Territories. With the future development of resources along the Mackenzie Valley corridor, we could see a spike in employment and revenue with MTS. This government, however, must look at MTS's position within the Department of Infrastructure and consider the option of making it a Crown corporation in order to properly track revenue and expenses and streamline its operations. To address issues of employment, contracting, and procurement in Hay River, we need to focus on infrastructure projects in the South Slave. One such project I would like to see happen, started at least within this next 4 years, is the reconstruction of Highway 1 from the border to Enterprise. This highway has had minimal work over the past several years and is in fairly poor condition. It is a highway that, I guess, welcomes tourists to the Northwest Territories. This work could be accomplished over several years, thus allowing opportunities for local and northern contractors. Employment for local and northern residents and supply of goods and services by local and northern retailers and contractors. Tying into the fishing and marine industries is a matter of dredging. Dredging has been discussed numerous times over the last few assemblies. However, there has been no action. It is time to sit down with the federal government, the First Nations, the fishers, and MTS to discuss how we will start this important project. This matter has to be addressed and completed at the earliest as possible. Further to this, the 19th Legislative Assembly, in cooperation with the federal government, must take action with respect to the building and completion of an all-weather highway along the Mackenzie corridor. This would help to alleviate the current economic situation by way of business, employment, and training opportunities for a northerner. It has the potential for lowering the cost of goods as well. The GNWT itself is a consumer of goods and services. We must ensure that the BIP program remains in place and that it is monitored and applied fairly across the North. It needs to be reviewed to ensure that larger projects capture the benefits of the BIP incentives as well. Another issue in Hay River, very important one, is housing. Hay River is experiencing a shortage of market and subsidized rental units. Fire damage to the high-rise building in Hay River resulted in the loss of 122 rental apartments. Due to this loss, people have been forced to relocate to outside of the NWT, find accommodation with friends and or relatives. This is not an acceptable situation. To compound this problem, there is limited land available on which to construct buildings to offset the loss of rental units. We are looking at 1 to 2 years before land would be ready for such development. I will be requesting that this government work with these residents to find solutions to ensure they are looked after sooner than later as winter is upon us. Education. Education is close to everyone's heart. Residents in Hay River are concerned about access to education. They are concerned about class size. They are concerned about limited classroom assistance. They are concerned about recruitment of educators. They are concerned about budgets. And mostly, they are concerned about the students, the ones who are impacted by all of those issues. The NWT has a relatively small population which should work to our benefit when it comes to providing quality education. We talk about a university, yet our children are struggling with access and getting to school. We need to focus on the youth, ensure they have every opportunity to graduate from high school with an education that does not require further upgrading to get them into the trades, college, or university. We should be expanding and strengthening the programs at Aurora College and Fort Smith. If we can educate Northerners in the North, we will experience superior retention rates in the areas of education. Land claims. If we want a strong economy, we need to settle and promote the timely settlement of claims and self-government in the NWT. This will provide the certainty needed for development to occur and bolster our economy. The GNWT has to reevaluate its role with respect to negotiations. Do we actually need to be at the table? Should we only be in a supporting role with the Indigenous governments? These are questions we must ask, and if we are to resolve land claims and self-government agreement in a timely manner. Being on the south shore of the Great Slave Lake there, the issue of water came up numerous occasions. People are concerned that industries in southern Canada will continue to negatively impact our access to quality, quantity, and flow of water. This government has to ensure we have a solid working relationship with Indigenous organizations if we are to protect our water and our lands. These are some of the issues that we had to, or that arose there during my walk around in Hay River. There are many other issues which I'll be addressing in the near future, and as we go along, that list will probably increase. But again, I look forward to working with everybody here, and hopefully we have a great 4 years, and we probably only have 3 actual years to do the work in, so good luck. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Simpson, the member-elect for Hay River South. Members, before we move on, I want to take this opportunity to recognize a number of visitors in the gallery. First of all, I'd like to recognize Mr. Robert C. McLeod. Mr. McLeod is formerly the Dean of the Legislative Assembly, having served in the 15th, 16th, 17th, and 18th legislatures, and he continues to be the Deputy Premier, the Minister of Finance, the Minister for Environment and Natural Resources, and the Minister responsible for the NWT Power Corporation. Welcome, Mr. McLeod. I also want to recognize and welcome Mr. Alfred Moses, a former member of the 17th and 18th Legislative Assembly and still the Minister responsible for the NWT Housing Corporation, the Minister of MACA, and the Minister responsible for the Workers' Safety and Compensation Commission. Welcome to you both. I hope you're enjoying the view from that part of the building. And the attendance of our 2 former members from Inuvik is a good segue into our 2 new members from Inuvik. And I'll turn the floor over now to the member-elect for Inuvik Boot Lake, Ms. Tom.
Good morning, colleagues. It's great to be here finally, a day late, but that's fine. I just want to start off by thanking my constituents in Inuvik Boot Lake for having me here. I'm very honored to be sitting here. And I want to start off by talking about the Indigenous relations. I recognize the need for improved relations between the GNWT and Indigenous people. I'm a witness to this. To address this issue in the short term, educational sessions should be mandatory for GNWT employees who are dealing with Indigenous people. The goal of these sessions should be to provide some knowledge on the history and the culture of Indigenous people. This will provide an understanding for which will foster and respect appreciation towards Indigenous people and allow for improved working relationships. The other topic is land claims, and we're kind of talking about common themes here, and self-determination. These agreements allow for the federal government to provide communities, Indigenous groups with core funding, also tax sharing agreements, tax revenue agreements, also direct and multi-year funding. Upon ratification of these, either the Constitution and the agreement, there is no pressure for the Indigenous groups to draw down any lawmaking authority except build capacity. I think that's important. And most of these Indigenous groups have been ready for years. I know many groups have negotiating for over 20 years, and I think that the GNWT needs to work closely with the Indigenous groups to get some of these agreements finalized. Healthcare. The healthcare system is important to every family in the NWT. Therefore, as leaders, our goal should be to advocate for our constituents to receive a high quality of medical care and services. To achieve this, we need to keep up with the medical advancements and best practices by providing support and investment in our healthcare professionals, the equipment and infrastructure. Also, to reduce the waiting list for residents to see health specialists. You look at my community now in Inuvik, and the wait list is over a year for someone to come and do ear, nose, and throat. So there's that, that pressure to get things moving a lot quicker. Also, social support. I don't believe the problem is just about alcohol and drugs. It's about some of the root problems and the inability to address trauma from residential school. Poor economy, lack of jobs, not enough social housing is a system cycle that needs to be addressed. The other thing I heard in doing my door-to-door, which, yeah, your knuckles get sore from knocking at all those doors. But the other thing is elders abuse. That's a big thing, and a lot of people are concerned that there's not enough support for them, and it's just becoming so common that people allow it to happen. The recruitment and retaining of nurses in the north is also essential. Currently, there is no incentive for nurses to come work in the north, where you look at some of them would rather fly in and fly out. That was a big concern that I was hearing from a lot of my constituents in the Boot Lake riding. Also, heating source. We're all aware that Inuvik residents mostly rely on natural gas as their main heating source. The constituents are concerned with the lifespan of the natural gas, and it's quite worrisome because they're wondering if they're able to get through the winter. And I think that's very important for my constituents. Climate change. Our elders have told us for years that something's not right in our seasonal patterns, which in my view is climate change. You look at it now, it's October, and we had snow on the ground, it went away. It's not normal. The 2013 Climate Change Strategic Framework was developed, and I think some of the feedback as part of that was, well, it was categorized into 9 themes, and I'd like to ensure that the capacity and support is available to continue moving forward in this area, using the work completed as a starting point. Education. Education is critical in improving our education system, which will have a positive impact in other areas, like the spin-offs and employment, income support, housing, health, and crime rates. Some issues to address within our educational system include the ratio of students per teacher, as well as improving the success rate of our high school graduates to get them directly into college and universities rather than using up their college, their prep program. Another thing, it's great that residents are utilizing the Jordan's Principle funding, as it's a help to the schools, the parents, and the students. But they're afraid, as a result of this announcement, when will it end? And will it continue? Because this just cannot continue to be a Band-Aid solution. Recreation priorities. The one thing I heard from my constituents in the Boot Lake was a commitment that the GNWT made to the town of Inuvik 15 years ago for the swap of the school land and replacing the ball and soccer field. My constituents want to have this deal done and completed. What would I like to see in 4-10 years? We need economic stability rather than a boom and bust. We've seen this in the Beaufort Delta oil and gas days. We've also seen it along with some of the mines that are happening in the Northwest Territories. I've heard and agreed that let's finally connect the Mackenzie Valley Highway. There are so many spin-offs as a result of making this happen. To ensure that our community prosper is crucial to lay the foundation for a stable economic future. We need to invest in the well-being and set the stage for success for our next generation. We as elected officials have to start thinking outside the box in order to make these happen. It's difficult recognizing the different needs of each of the region. I think that's what we'll hear today as we start to talk about what we've heard, and we've all heard different things. We need to ensure continued investment in building capacity, tourism, developing a new industry with a focus on economic development. We also should be making a concerted effort to encourage resource development. The Prime Minister established a freeze on the oil and gas exploration and development without proper consultation. We should also lobby for further investments from the Arctic and Northern Framework that was recently announced by the federal government. I'm looking forward to the next 4 years working with all of you, and I'm sure by the time we get around today, we'll hear a lot of common themes. So thank you, Kuya Naini.
Thank you, Ms. Tom. And certainly common themes are one of the things that we're keeping our ears open for when we start progressing towards setting priorities. Next, I'll turn to the newly elected member for Inuvik Twin Lakes, Ms. Semler.
Good morning, everyone. Uvlami. First, I'd like to say it's with great honor to be standing here as MLA-elect representing the riding of Inuvik Twin Lakes. I'm truly grateful that the residents for selecting me to be their voice in this 19th Assembly. And I would also like to thank Minister Robert C. McLeod for his numerous years representing the Inuvik Twin Lakes riding. To my colleagues here today, congratulations to you as well. I look forward to working with you over the next 4 years as we strive to work better for the lives of all of our residents. Today I want to share with you some of the important and repeated concerns in my riding that I heard about along the campaign period as we go through our priority setting process. These are important issues to the residents of the Inuvik Twin Lakes, and they are also serious concerns to myself as a Inuvik Twin Lakes resident. I'd like to start with the health of our residents. The mental health and addictions. We have an increasing homeless population in our community that needs to be addressed. We need to support these residents in their healing, and sending residents who are mainly Indigenous out of the territory is not the answer. We need to have local, community, regional, and territorial programs where we involve our Indigenous partners to aid in this creation. Our residents want to be able to attend alone or as a family. Sending our family members away has not proven in past history to do any good, but cause more harm and trauma. Let's not continue to repeat this history. We need to support these residents with basic needs when they are completing any type of treatment, as well as places to live and programs to continue to support them. Without these, they fall back into the cycle where they were before. I heard a lot about medical travel on my door-to-door visits. Inuvik is a regional hub, but a lot of our residents get sent to Yellowknife and Edmonton. For many of those residents in Inuvik, a lot of them have never left Inuvik, and so when we have clients, when we have residents that have to be sent to Yellowknife or Edmonton, it's very scary, and they're already under stress for the illness or whatever they're being sent for, and then to have to do it alone is, in my opinion, inhumane to these residents because it causes a lot of stress on them. I've heard that because some elders can walk, can speak English, that they don't qualify for just because they're an elder. Well, what about fear and what about anxiety and all those other things that this causes? There is a lack of trust in our health system. With high turnover in staff, this lack of trust is continuing to build, where residents do not want to access health services as they are finding it difficult to trust the system and they feel like they are not being treated with respect. I feel that stabilizing the workforce will aid in building trust and connections with the residents and communities. It will also increase the cultural awareness and safety amongst the staff, instead of trying to teach them a 4-hour course for a 2-week period that they're going to spend in our community. And again, and again, and again, this type of training is not worth the manager's time, and it negatively impacts our community members. Elders, we continue to hear that we have an aging population, and we know this to be true. We need to ensure that our elders can remain in their homes as long as they can. We need to support them by increasing after hours and weekend home support for them, so this can be a reality in all our communities. Without this, families get burnt out, elders get neglected, and eventually end up into our long-term cares before they need to. Youth, we have heard a lot of things about mental health in our youth. We need to be working with our youth in our communities, especially in our small communities where they do not have a lot of services. They do not have a lot of recreational services. They lack a lot of support. And with the recent suicides in our region, we have seen it, I have personally seen it, that our students, our teenagers are suffering, and we need to work with them to find ways to make them feel like they're part of the community and achieve wellness. Housing. Inuvik has a lack of affordable housing, long wait lists. Some have been waiting years. They are couch surfing on families and wherever they can. Some live under buildings, some live in tents, some staying in our shelters for permanently, it feels like. I've heard that some of the policies are hindering or negatively impacting people that are in housing. For example, this basing the rent on last year's income tax. This causes problems for some, as a lot of work is seasonal and there is no guarantee for income in the next year. Example in our region and our community is the Tuck Highway. We had a lot of people working on that project, but now it's done. And people are expected to pay that higher rent this year based on their income last year, even though they may be unemployed. Power bills are also an issue that I heard when I went door to door. In the past years, they've gone from having subsidized power in the housing units to having to pay full power. These buildings are the oldest buildings in our community and are probably the least energy efficient. And these are our most vulnerable families that are living in these units, and having to pay these high power bills is unacceptable. It takes away from their bottom dollar to feed their family. We need to find creative ways to deal with our housing issues right across the north. Cost of living. The economy in Inuvik is down and people are struggling to survive and pay their bills. At the same time that the economy is suffering, the cost of living in Inuvik continues to increase. Residents are concerned that they will no longer be able to live in Inuvik as a result of the high cost of living. In fact, I'm aware of people that sell their homes altogether and leave the community. I'm aware of people that are selling their homes to move into rentals or to go into low-cost housing because they just can't afford it. I heard from elders that took on programs in the previous governments that live in elder homes that no longer can afford to live in those homes and don't know how to manage their bills. I've also heard that people are struggling with the price of natural gas. While a lot of our homes were converted to natural gas some time ago, the drastic increase to heat our homes is very concerning to the people of Inuvik. Our residents don't understand how we can have the infrastructure be surrounded by natural gas, yet still pay these high prices. We as a government need to find ways to make it affordable to live in all our communities. Education. One of the terms that we hear over and over and over again, and I know the education system does not like to hear it, is social passing. It is a term that is used where our students move along through the system, but it is negatively impacting their ability to successfully move through the system. We have students that are very keen to know that they don't have to do the work to move along, and by the time they get to grade 10, we are seeing what we call, as my previous work in education as a board member, the grade 10 bottleneck. where by the time they move along till grade 9 and they move into the grade 10, they are having difficulties advancing past this stage. We need to look at how we are using that program in our system and ensuring that students that have the capability are not being social passed. We need an education system that is equal to or better than the rest of Canada. This includes barrier-free childhood education, because if we have more of our early childhood kids from 0 to 5 in programs that will enhance them, then by the time they get to kindergarten, they will be ready. This is something that is near and dear to my heart, and I feel that this will help with all children having access to childcare and families that don't have to worry about how they're going to come up with paying that. Attendance continues to be an issue that we face in the communities. We need to build bridges between families and the education system that will allow for better attendance. We still face an intergenerational trauma as a result of residential school system and its effects, and we see this in all our outlying communities, and I'm sure we see it in Yellowknife as well, that once we have a family, and this is what I heard, is they're treating my child the way they treated me in school, and I'm not going to force them to be there. So these are things that I've heard along the way. We also need a strong regional college campus. We need to bring back programming that has been lost in our community. The Natural Resource Technology program in our community provided jobs into our region. We know that there is a program in Fort Smith, but the people that took the program in our region got jobs in our region, trained in our region, and it was very successful. We also lost the trades program in our region, and a lot of our members of our community need to have options in the region because they do not want to pack up their families and go, and it's unrealistic for us to think that they should. We know that we have an aging population, and yet we have sporadic health programs in our community, in our college. We had the home support worker, that's sporadic. We need to plan for future development that's going to be into our community. We need to provide those courses in our region so that people from our region are training and getting certified so that they can take care of our elders. We need to take care of our own elders in our long-term care facilities. I'll move on to jobs. As mentioned in Inuvik, like all other communities, we all need jobs. We cannot lose any more jobs in our community due to centralization. We have lost some high-paying jobs in the justice and health field, and our past leaders worked hard for decentralization. We need to review the BIP policy and create ways to ensure local contractors have a better chance of securing contracts as opposed to outside contractors. An example might be including more points for a contractor who is local and even more points for hiring local, because that money stays in our community and it feeds our families and our communities. We need strong communities for a stronger NWT. Working with our Indigenous people, we need to be working together with our Indigenous governments to achieve more for our residents. We need to remove unnecessary barriers that hinder this progress. We need to finalize land claims and self-government agreements, which will bring certainty to the NWT in terms of investments and creating true partnerships with our Indigenous governments. Working with Canada, we also need Canada to play a bigger role in helping us achieve our goals. Canada can help us immensely to meet our objectives, to truly be the true North, strong and free. If we as the 19th Assembly can make progress on these issues over the next 4 years, they will have positive impacts on the NWT and our residents for years to come. Thank you. Kunaini.
Thank you, Ms. Semler. Next, we have the member-elect for Cam Lake, Ms. Cleveland.
Bonjour, Emedo Hoizi. Hello and good morning. My name is Caitlin Cleveland. I'm here proudly as MLA-elect for Cam Lake, and I'm honored and thankful to have been entrusted this role by my family, friends, and neighbors. I start today by congratulating every single one of you, because man or woman, as we sit here today, together we have made history. In one election, we have gone from the lowest gender-balanced House in Canada to the highest. Together, we have an opportunity to do things differently. This is not only a turning point for the history of the NWT, but also the world. People are moving beyond borders. The climate is changing, our expectations are evolving, and the world is watching. What does it look like when we work together? How can we shape the 19th Legislative Assembly to reflect the values and strengths of every single one of us? And how can we do things differently? Throughout my campaign, I used the tagline, "I believe in our North," and it resonated with many of the people of Cam Lake. I truly believe that the only way forward is together, and that to truly succeed, we must work collaboratively with the success of the entire NWT at heart. We need to be able to trust not only in our own resolve to do good work for our constituents, but also trust that our colleagues recognize the importance of supporting the success of every Northerner, regardless of age, gender, sexual orientation, gender identification, race, culture, religion, place of birth, or home community. We need to move forward together by empowering our North to overcome challenges that are pushing at us from our past and see the opportunities pulling us into our future. My platform was divided into 3 key areas: people, land, and prosperity. It was important to me to identify what linked each of these 3 elements and how I saw them working together. I reflected on how our territory operates, our strengths, and what I want to see evolve. For me, it all came back to connection. People are truly our greatest resource in the Northwest Territories. People make our houses into homes and our lands into communities. People also make up 75% of our territorial income through federal transfer payments. We need people. We need to support and grow the people that do live here. We need to work with our public servants to promote and market the NWT as a great place to live and work, and we need to ensure we have the appropriate supports for people who choose to make the North home. So we need to connect people to the North and then connect them to the right supports when they arrive. As much as we prefer people to come and stay, sometimes they come for a short visit to see the aurora, catch some fish, visit some friends and family. Last year, British Columbia welcomed over $700 million in cultural experience tourism. This is a great opportunity for our North, and we need to capture it. But for our people who already live here, and for people who choose to make the North home, we need to focus on growing our infrastructure to better support the ability of Northerners to thrive. I want to take you through the top concerns I heard at the doors of Cam Lake constituents. Affordable, healthy housing was the #1 discussion at doors in Cam Lake. Our housing infrastructure, not only in Cam Lake but across the North, needs to be assessed. Housing has an incredible ability to build communities, and we need to keep this in mind along with affordability, multi-generational, and accessible housing. Housing should connect and build people, not isolate them. The second most discussed topic at doors was our energy infrastructure and the fact that not one solution will work for every single community. We need to expand our energy infrastructure to smaller scale mixed energy systems to reduce our dependency on imported fuels across the NWT. These smaller systems pay back faster, are more resilient, and therefore reduce the cost of living for all Northerners. Both the first and second primary concerns of residents can be linked to the cost of living. People are finding it harder to thrive in the North, but I was inspired by how many people discuss solutions by focusing on increasing the resiliency of our Northern communities. In addition to housing and energy infrastructure, we discussed food infrastructure and the need to focus on locally grown and locally harvested food sources. The success of the Inuvik Community Greenhouse was celebrated more than once, along with our ability going forward to socially and environmentally sustainably harvest from our lands and waters. Our communications infrastructure was highlighted, and many residents questioned the cost of creating broadband redundancy versus the lost revenue for the NWT when our communication systems are compromised. Transportation infrastructure, and more specifically the road to resource, was a polarizing topic with my constituents, who questioned the value of mining royalties, lost labor dollars through non-Northern workers, and the environmental impacts of development versus the cost of the road. And finally, education infrastructure. Environmental capital is where the more you use, the less you have. With social and intellectual capital, the more you use, the more you have. It multiplies into beautiful communities. This means that social and intellectual capital is most sustainable for us. The Polytechnic was a huge interest not just to the people of within the area of Cam Lake, but throughout Yellowknife. The Polytechnic and the innovation it brings increases our resilience to change by creating a research and training base for our future. In addition to the Polytechnic, we know that job projections show trades as an area of opportunity for graduates. We need to align industry leaders for direction, skilled tradespeople for mentorship, foster partnership between Skills Canada and local businesses, and support schools and apprentices to expand trades opportunities. Schools need our support, but not only to grow these tradespeople or graduates ready for a polytechnic. They need our support to grow children and keep families connected. I believe we need to change the protocols within our government and address how we are allowed to work within schools with the whole well-being of the child in mind. In addition to the new child and youth care coordinator positions, we need a program navigator who works with families in connection with this position to connect families to government programs with the purpose of keeping families connected. And parents need to be involved in and empowered through this process. We need to be able to work together to lift families up, building resiliency in our communities rather than continuing to work in inefficient silos. We cannot expect teachers to address the educational needs of students when the fundamental survival needs of our children are not being met. We need to cut away the red tape that prevents us from having meaningful conversations that bring about meaningful change. The success of our children depends on our ability to come together with respect and integrity. The program Building Stronger Families is starting to work similar to this, but we need to keep the momentum going. Connected to education at both ends is affordable childcare and after-school care. Safe, affordable childcare supports a parent's ability to pursue further education and meaningful employment, as well as a child's ability to thrive within the school system. But not every community will have the same exact childcare and after-school care needs, and this is fluid with all of our programs and supports. Every single one of our communities is unique, and what success looks like to each community may differ. We need to work with each of our communities to establish unique wellness indicators and empower local governments to administer and choose programs that work for them. Empowered communities show increased participation in evidence-based, informed decision-making where communities can decide their future with the support of the GNWT. Maybe that future is improved graduation and employment rates, increased use of Indigenous languages, increased agriculture and local harvesting, or more on-the-land-based schooling. Throughout the election month, many of us shared a vision of a government led by stronger, meaningful relationships both in the walls of this House, with the community and Indigenous governments, the government of Canada. We started our day yesterday eating and sharing with Dene Nation, our first meeting as MLAs-elect. There we discussed the need to come to the table, be present, to listen, and to understand. Reconciliation as a word means to come together. Reconciliation is key to both people and land. And with land comes land claims. We need to prioritize, but at every opportunity. We need to collectively understand the root cause of addictions and to develop a suite of solutions. School-based resiliency programs and services for children, listening opportunities for people to share and others to hear, medical detox opportunities here in the north, well-sourced and supported on-the-land treatment, and community-based transitional programming to help people recover are all elements of healing solutions that need to happen within our territory. Prosperity is something that happens over time. It isn't a lottery. As we enter into a government that everyone has said will be fiscally tight, we need to think beyond our 4 years and put a plan in motion for the fiscal success of future governments. Throughout our campaigns, we were asked again and again what we would do to support economic diversification to build our economy. While there are many opportunities within the North, a lot of tools to encourage development are similar and consistent. By making strategic infrastructure investments that reduce the cost of energy, ensuring the GNWT policies and processes are modern, fair, transparent, and accessible, settling land regulatory processes, and clarifying measurable objectives to provide certainty for business and the environment. By supporting local and Indigenous business development that align with our vision of a healthy, sustainable North, and by strengthening the NWT skilled labor pool, where the conversation shifts from not if, but how. Great leaders inspire action by defining their why. During my door-to-door visit in the Cam Lake riding, I visited an elder, or a knowledge keeper, and his granddaughter. My father-in-law and I tossed a ball back and forth with them while we spoke, and the knowledge keeper asked me what an MLA was, where they worked, and what their role in the community was. As I explained, the knowledge keeper shied away and replied, "I am just a nobody, and I don't vote." At this moment, I had a tagline and had discovered how my platform connected together, but I did not yet have my why. This man, in this moment, became my why. Today, we share our what we want to accomplish. Over the coming years, we'll work collaboratively with Northern public servants to determine our how. But to truly be effective leaders that inspire change, we need to work together to establish our collective why. Thank you.
Thank you, Member-elect for Cam Lake, Ms. Cleveland. Members-elect, I just received a note from the interpreters asking me to slow down when I speak. I've got a bad tendency to speak a little bit too fast, so also a good reminder to all of us to slow down your speech so the interpreters can keep up, and almost make an effort to speak ridiculously slow so that they can keep up with the translation. So now we're going to turn to our first returning member, who I know has no difficulty speaking slowly. And keep in mind that there's nothing going to happen when the clock runs out after 15 minutes. No one's going to cut you off. So Mr. Blake, the returning member for Mackenzie Delta, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Good morning, colleagues. It is with great honor that I congratulate everyone in the chamber today. Over the next 4 years, we have a lot of work ahead of us. This election has made history with the amount of women being voted in. Let's make this 19th Assembly one to remember by making our mandates a reality. We have the power to help our ridings with our voices, but mostly we as members of this Assembly have the power to make change to the NWT by working together. Today, I want to touch on my riding. We have many challenges in the Mackenzie Delta, as we do in our ridings, in all our ridings, especially ridings with small communities. Today, as I set my priorities for the Mackenzie Delta, I do so with so much determination and a will to make the Mackenzie Delta succeed in all aspects of our day-to-day living. Our services need a lot of attention, starting with, and in no particular order. I say no particular order because, to me, they are all important. I stand here representing the Mackenzie Delta and the whole Northwest Territories. I'd like to begin with Aklavik and the need for a new school, not renovations to what is already existing to the oldest school in the Northwest Territories. My main goal is to get a new building with all the necessary space for the best quality of education for my constituents. We've been to Aklavik many times and the concerns are echoed that we need a new school. Talking about education, in all three communities in my riding, we want the same level of education as in the regional centers. Our students deserve the best quality and highest level of education they can get. As it is right now, we have the best teachers dedicated to our students and willing to stay long-term, which is beneficial to our students and our communities. However, I still get feedback that we could improve in our system, and I will be talking to the DEAs and BDEC, hoping to help them decide priorities so that I can advocate on their behalf. Health concerns are always brought up from time to time, from the lack of medical escorts for our elders, medical escorts for our cancer patients, and for our sick patients who go for surgery. Quality health care is a concern right across the NWT. My constituents want to see more dentist visits, more doctors visits, and the same regular visits in all three communities, as well as physio, counseling, and the list goes on. Colleagues, we want more health care, and we need relief for our health and social services workers. We need them to be healthy in order to look after our families and our children. Also, my constituents would like to see long-term care in our communities in order to keep our elders in the communities and with their families. Policing in Sigachik, we appreciate the extra hands that we do receive from Fort McPherson, but we know hands down that we need full-time RCMP in Sigachik. I will advocate on this and will make sure that we have something full-time sooner than later. Our economy is at a standstill. Let's get some money in the Mackenzie Delta to create jobs. Also for for the Beaufort Delta, we need the Mackenzie Valley Highway extended from Wrigley to Inuvik. Also, increase our funding for our community governments so that they can focus on infrastructure such as swimming pools, upgrading our arenas, baseball diamonds, and community roads, just to name a few. Because in order to keep any of our professionals in our communities, whether it's doctors, teachers, social workers, we need these sort of facilities, and also for our youth, our future. The Dempster Highway and our winter ice roads are always in need of building, operation, and maintenance. I want to secure funding so that we always have work for our local contractors. Not only that, the upkeep of our highways and ice roads only ensure the safety for people traveling to and from. And for Aklavik, an all-season road from Aklavik to Fort McPherson has been talked about for years. I know because I've mentioned it more than you can imagine. This is what we want, and it's a reality. We have the power to make this happen. Imagine the high cost of living right now, especially with the rivers ready to freeze over, making it isolated, making Aklavik an isolated community. Being isolated only means food and fuel costs increase, and this has to change. Daycare in our communities is also another priority. I've heard from many constituents that in order for them to hold a stable job, if they want to attend school, and if they want to take advantages of training opportunities, they need daycare. And daycare is one of our highest priorities. Housing will always be way up there for concerns in the Mackenzie Delta. In fact, it is a concern for every riding. Our communities are growing. We have less and less housing for young families wanting to start out on their own. We have homeless people in our communities, whether we want to admit it or not. All our communities have individuals couch surfing, nowhere to go, and I want to focus on housing, more housing units for singles, for families, and for our elders. Also working together with the Gwich'in Tribal Council, Inuvialuit Regional Council, our bands, designated Gwich'in organizations, and community corporations. I have so much more to add, and I want the best for the NWT, but right now the Mackenzie Delta is my riding, so I will speak on their behalf and fight for the next 4 years for the best I can get for my constituents. I want to close by thanking my supporters, the individuals who came forward to give me advice, and for everyone just having faith in me to lead them in this 19th Assembly. My biggest supporter, Jamie, my children, my parents, and everyone, I just want to say thank you, and I look forward to working with you all. Merci.
Thank you, Mr. Blake, the member-elect for Mackenzie Delta. Next, we have the member-elect for Montfouille, Mr. Lafferty, and I wish to remind all members-elect that setting your language dials to 1 will allow you to hear the interpretation in English. Mr. Lafferty, the floor is yours.
Merci, Mr. Clerk. Mr. Clerk,
Mr. Clerk, before we start, I'd like to mention the 4 missing on Great Slave Lake, and I think we should give them 1 minute of silence and do a prayer for them.
colleagues, I'd just like to take for us to take a moment of silence for the missing 4 fishermen and their families on the Great Slave Lake. Ms. Clerk, our thoughts and prayers to the family in Hay River. Mr. Clerk,
Mr. Clerk, first of all, I'd like to congratulate all the elected MLAs for the region. We have a big job ahead of us. Today, when we look at our situation, everything is okay. Not only that, but when we look and reflect on our community, we have to represent our people. For myself, I represent a Mufi region. They've given me a job for another 4 years. I'm really thankful to my region. I think they have faith in me to continue, so I'm here again. When we represent our people, we have to do our best. We have to always take advice from our people and put forward their concern. That's the reason why we are here. We have to always remember who we represent. And also, we're here for the next 4 years. We're here on the 19th Assembly, and we have a lot of issues ahead of us. Let's all work well together and support each other. We said that yesterday, and today we will be like a rock to push our issues forward. When we look at the government, we're looking at three things. We always want to do the best for them. That's the reason why we are here. When we look at the government and MLAs, I want those two to work well together. We need to be cautious about issues and make sure that nothing goes wrong with our discussions. We also have to consider working with other organizations. We represent the Northwest Territories at 33 communities. We will have a lot of issues to discuss. Yesterday we had a meeting. We will also have another meeting next week with the Dene leaders. They will also give us advice on their issues that they want us to consider. Let's all work together on those issues as well. The 19 MLAs that are here, let's put our pack-sack in front with all the issues on the table. It is our people's issues, and we need to try to help them with those. I also like to congratulate every one of you again. There's a few things I would like to talk about regarding housing, education, and also early childhood issues, our languages, our culture. I will also comment on that, and also in the smaller isolated community, everything is so expensive. I want to talk about that, and also talk about how can we improve our economy in the Northwest Territories. I will comment on that. And also, I'll say this much in my language, and now I'll switch to English. I'd like to thank you, Masi.
Colleagues, I'd just like to begin by congratulating all of you here today in our chamber. And I'd just like to say Masi to my Mofi constituencies as well. Mofi constituents that allow me for another 4 years to serve them in this House as their representative. And I also want to thank Mr. R.C. McLeod that was here earlier on passing on the torch of being the dean of this House to me. And I just want to say merci for all the services over the years. Colleagues, it is my goal for the next 4 years that we need to look at 19th Assembly as a government that takes pride in itself in collaboration and also cooperation. A government that works together for the good of all the people of the Northwest Territories. This government will be a government in which cabinet and regular members have found a way to work closely together and effectively in a manner that satisfies both groups, both parties, and produces programs and services that truly helps improve the quality of life for all Northerners. The next 4 years presents an opportunity for both to build on good work done by many people before us here today, and work together to tackle issues that we know our residents face, such as high cost of living, health, or wellness issues, education, employment challenges in small communities, homelessness, food security, and continued efforts needed to support many northern families living from effects of the history and legacy of the residential schools and the result of Indigenous language laws and cultural practices and ceremony. Goal number 1, in 4 years, the NWT Housing Corporation policy is amended to provide viable solutions to homelessness issues throughout the Northwest Territories. How are we going to do that? Continue to increase available, safe, affordable housing. To do this, we will have to reevaluate our current policy, a system so it aligns with our community needs and meets our people's needs as well. A made in the North solutions, innovation, and also technology. And creating partnerships with local governments and empower them to build units for their communities. To further explore tiny homes initiatives and building capacity in communities to build them on their own. Another goal that I'd like to focus is on the NWT Polytechnic University, or we call it University of the North. My view is that it's been established and will provide Northerners, as well as Canadians and international students, a means to study diploma, degrees, master's program, and a wide variety of trades. Develop a Post-Secondary Education Act. Establish increased post-secondary programming. Encourage collaboration between the 3 NWT campuses to offer the best possible programs that meets the needs of our students. Provide research opportunities for Canadians and international academics looking into climate change, research, and other Arctic-specific issues and challenges that impact studies in the Northwest Territories' climate change. My vision is that in 10 years, the majority of NWT students are choosing to attend our University of the North, rather than to go south, because the programs are the highest quality and provide students with the skills and knowledge and the certification required to be ready for a workforce. Another area is to improve JK to grade 12 education in Northwest Territories. Infrastructure for community schools. Continued accountability for all schools. Continue to strengthen high-quality early education and JK to 12 education. Continue to expand e-learning opportunities for small communities so that all high school students have some opportunity to take advantage of the advanced academic courses regardless of their location. Evaluate the Early Childhood Development Action Plan, the Junior Kindergarten Instructional Hours Review, improve school formula funding. Reevaluate NWT Education Act to reflect on the current educational needs and our priorities. Programs and services in all NWT communities. Quality and affordability of early childhood programs in all communities, including the 10 smallest communities that are currently unable to offer programming to children 0 to 3 years of age. Another goal to focus on is to increase efforts in the areas of language and cultural preservation. Advocate for and support language revitalization efforts. Build capacity in communities to develop a pool of language teachers and knowledge keepers. Encourage Indigenous language immersion programs in the K-12 education system so that 10 years from now, we have students that are fluent in their language and to be proud to use it. Continue to support innovative initiatives, honoring the Indigenous culture and ways of doing both within the government and at the grassroots level. I'll just give you some examples. Initiatives undertaken by the Department of Health and Social Service Indigenous Health and Community Wellness Division, Deninahu on the Land and Leadership Initiatives, support on the Land Treatment Program, and Justice Program, including Urban on the Land Wellness Camp. Programs that encourage traditional skills such as harvesting and trapping, and encourage stewardship of the land and animals. These initiatives not only honor Indigenous languages, traditions, and beliefs, but also work to preserve them. Another goal is to develop a plan to deal with the high cost of living here in the Northwest Territories. Food security by means of providing new incentives and supports to get more people back on the land harvesting. Harvesting wildlife such as caribou, moose, muskox, bison, etc. We need to put more emphasis on agriculture and helping Northerners get training and skills and equipment to start growing their own food in their community greenhouses, within the schools, so the students learn from a young age to learn about agriculture. Invest additional funding in expanding the community harvesting funding. Focus on communities hiring a group of talented and trusted harvesters to go hunting for the community. In particular, to go harvest wild meat and fish for the elderly and for the single mothers and for those that are sick and also disabled. Another goal is to develop an energy plan. Energy plan that establish a plan to reduce the use of diesel generators in communities to cut costs of living and look at more viable and green solutions such as hydro, solar, and wind power. Commit to converting up to 50% of the GNWT infrastructures, buildings, schools, health centers, and warehouses, etc., to be more energy efficient, using wood pellets rather than using diesel to heat within the next 10 years. Another goal that we need to seriously look at will be to improve economic viability of the Northwest Territories. Settle all outstanding land claims and self-government. It is in the best interest of the people of Northwest Territories that we support our Indigenous governments in their rights to self-governing and autonomy. Work with Indigenous governments and federal government to find a mutual agreeable solution to finalize. Elected officials need to meet with the Indigenous leadership to identify what are the real challenges and come up with solutions to support them. This is the key to economic diversity and growth. investigate opportunities to increase tourism across NWT with a focus on ecotourism so that all communities can benefit from the economic opportunities that tourism brings. Continue supporting up and coming mining opportunities by reducing bureaucratic red tape and barriers to mining development opportunities. We need to be open to business, for any business, for exploration, and also future mining opportunities. But this has to be on our terms, northern terms. We have a say. Develop a plan to encourage mining and exploration in the Northwest Territories that satisfies both our need for economic development and environmental stewardship. What steps should the GNWT take to achieve this vision? We need to be practical in our vision and not to create a priority plan that is overambitious. Our plan needs to be achievable. The 18th Legislative Assembly was overambitious. In the end, too many items were not achieved, are still in transition. Most small jurisdictions, provincial, territorial governments set only 10 to 15 priorities. Our goal is to meet the needs of our people of the Northwest Territories. We cannot meet these needs if we overstretch ourselves. So I'm looking forward to working with all my colleagues in this House. Masi.
Thank you, Member-elect Monfouy, Mr. Lafferty. Members-elect, it's 10:39. We'll now take a break. There's coffee in the members' lounge, and we'll reconvene at 11 a.m. Thank you.
This.
Welcome back, members-elect. Next.
Masi jog at Chukinouts in Equia, Yellowknife North, Mr. Johnson. Jo na kalagona na herisi etiri.
I have faith in the process, and hopefully I will be returning here. Colleagues, people of the Northwest Territories, I'm honored by this opportunity to stand in this legislature before all of you and share my priorities in the coming 4 years. Firstly, I want to introduce myself for those of you who I did not meet yesterday, and for the many residents of the Northwest Territories who may not know me. I am 29 years old, which makes me by far the youngest member of this legislature. I was also born and raised in Summerland, BC, and I know that there's sometimes uncertainty when a person is not born and raised in the North, but I assure you I earn the trust of the residents of Yellowknife North, and in time I hope to earn all of your trust. To those members, I hope to earn the privilege to invite me to your communities so I can meet your families, so I can speak to your constituents. And over my 4 years, I hope to get to all of the communities of the Northwest Territories. I'm a lawyer by trade. I'm deeply passionate about policy work. I'm deeply passionate about the work we do here in this legislature. Yellowknife is my home. It is where I have learned so much. It has given me so much opportunity. It's where I want to raise a family. And I want to recognize that I come from a place of privilege. I came up here as a lawyer. I have never known what it's like to have the government take my children away. I've never known what it's like to live in a community where the jobs are few and far between. And that is why I intend to listen. I intend to listen to all of you during this assembly. And I want you to recognize that when I speak, it is not just me speaking. I'm speaking for the members of Yellowknife, the constituents of Yellowknife North. I have a very diverse riding. It is a riding full of permanent residents who could not vote, but they are still my constituents. It is a riding full of doctors and lawyers and senior bureaucrats and policy experts who have educated me on various areas of law. It is a riding with people struggling on income assistance. And when I speak for my most vulnerable constituents. And I will give you that same service, that over the next 4 years, when you speak, I recognize you speak for the people who elected you and sent you here. And that is what I think we all have to remember. We represent the people of the Northwest Territories. I would like to thank each and every one of my constituents for taking the time to share their stories, concerns, and aspirations throughout this campaign. I'm humbled by the chance to be their voice for the next 4 years. As a caucus, we were handed an overwhelming mandate for change in this election. Change the way we invest, change the way we address our most pressing issues, change the way we do business in this legislature. We have a duty to our constituents to ensure that's reflected in our priorities. I will now talk about what I believe that change looks like. Change to me is a government pushing for big strides to better our society. Our public service contains some of the foremost policy experts in the world. No one is better suited to enact policy than our bureaucrats who work and live in the North. Now, I recognize we are going to enter into this game of survivor to select our cabinet and premier over the next 3 weeks. I myself will not be seeking cabinet. I intend to be a regular member that advocates for my constituent. Let us not let this process divide us. After that vote is, let us meet in caucus and come together. Over the next 4 years, we will make hard decisions. They will not always be unanimous, but let us not divide us. After those votes, we will come together in caucus and we will be whole again. In my platform, I advocated and I got elected on a platform of progressive social policies, one of which I'd like to speak to is universal daycare. And why universal? The word universal does not discriminate. It does not matter if you are white or Indigenous. It does not matter if you are from a community or Yellowknife. It allows us to enact policy that applies to all of the people of the Northwest Territories. Let us think bigger, dare to lead, and be the change we wish to see. We are all here because we won. We have earned this, and now we must be leaders. We all fight for our constituents, I recognize that, but reactionary is not the key. We must create a user-focused government. We do not want a faceless bureaucracy. We are small, we can be nimble. When someone comes to our government, especially in our communities, they know that person by name. We can hear our constituents and we can get what they want. We must try to find solutions, not be the reason for inaction. Not create red tape for our Northerners, but listen. I emphasize universal daycare because early childhood makes sure that every child ages 0 to 3 has a safe, fun place to thrive. If we want to revive our Indigenous languages, we need to create language nests. Universal daycare is a place to create those language nests. We were asked to see what our priorities look like over the next 4 years and what the NWT looks in the next 10 years. I would also like to think about what the NWT looks like over the next 30 years. I believe one of the first things this Assembly should do is declare that we are in a climate emergency and recognize that all of our decision-making going forward must always keep that fact in mind. For as we advocate for social change, it means nothing if we do not take meaningful climate action. I believe we have leaders we can send to the international stage. Just as we have seen in the Pacific Islands and the leaders in Greenland, we can probably do more by sending our leaders to speak on the international stage about the effects of climate change here in the North. We can do more to lower emissions by convincing others to do so, probably than we can lower them here in the North. Now, I think it is important to speak about mining at this time, because often, as an environmentalist, my views on mining get mischaracterized. Mining and the environment do not have to be polarized. In fact, I would like to see the first carbon-neutral mine in the NWT. I would like to see us use green mining technology that we can export around the world. One of the best things I think we could do for the city of Yellowknife and for the Northwest Territories is to have a gold mine right outside our boundaries. And I recognize that is scary. I recognize that is scary as we stand on 237,000 tons of arsenic. But we must remember that we must have faith in our land and water boards and our regulatory processes. We must have faith that new mining technology will not allow another giant mine disaster to happen. And as the world looks to rare earth metals, it's important to remember that solar panels are not made of wood and lithium batteries do not grow on trees. We have an opportunity here in the North to be leaders, and an international race to the bottom for commodity prices does not benefit us, does not benefit Canada. I want to tell you that I believe this last government got it wrong when it came to mining. We sent our cabinet to Vancouver to promote it, but we did not send our Indigenous governments with them, and we did not send our land and water boards together. This conversation about exploration is meaningless without all parties at the table, without all parties buying in. I believe change looks like a government that leads instead of follows. I heard throughout this campaign where my constituents want us to take the lead. One of those such proposals is a guaranteed livable income, also known as a universal basic income. We have to recognize that we are not exempt from the processes of automation and the labor market changes that are happening around the world. When I look forward to the year 2050, I want to see a universal income in the North. And I recognize that some priorities may not be accomplished in one election cycle, but we cannot lose sight of them. We cannot lose sight and hit reset every election cycle. I want to create priorities that plan for 10, 20, 30 years. We have an opportunity to establish a hub of students for this kind of economy by building a northern university in our capital. However, I believe this issue has become unnecessarily divisive. I would like to see this Assembly commit to net zero job loss at Fort Smith campus. I would like to see this Assembly do the same for the Nunavut campus. We are talking about expansion into a university. We are not talking about moving Aurora College to Yellowknife. We have to think bigger. We must recognize that it is our university, and is a university that must serve the needs of our students first and foremost. That means training nurses, social workers, and teachers to respond to the unique cultural context in each of our communities. We need programs focused on skills like geoscience, graphic design, environmental rehabilitation, which are desperately needed in our northern organizations, and put our students to work. We need trade programs that focus on green construction and retrofit techniques that are designed specifically for our infrastructure and climate. If we achieve this vision, I am confident this institution can establish our territory as a home of research, innovation, and entrepreneurship in our Arctic. But we must act now if we are ever going to get there. For our economy to grow, we need to attract and retain people. I believe we need to take a new approach this time around to finally achieve those aims. The world is full of workers who don't need to be in a traditional office 9 to 5, but it is also full of companies who can have satellite corporate offices virtually anywhere. We have a unique territorial financing formula and a lot of latitude to fund incentives to get people and retain people in the North. So let's take up the torch where our past government stalled. Let's get the incentives right and make a strong case for entrepreneurs and workers to join our vibrant northern economy. I believe we need to prioritize a green economy. Reducing energy consumption and saving costs on energy and logistics are crucial to our future. A big way we can affect that change as a government is putting serious focus into retrofit programs. It is a proven way to generate economic activity, save costs in the long run, and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. This is a way we can create good-paying jobs for our people, bring down their utilities bills, and improve their quality of life. And we can do this while increasing demand for products which can be produced locally. I believe change looks like a government with harm reduction at its core. People across our territory are struggling with intergenerational trauma, addictions, and mental health. I believe this Assembly must take leadership in reforming our supports for the most vulnerable people in their most vulnerable times. Let's make real investments in housing first, to bring the stability folks need to address their challenges. It works, and we should put the money behind it so it can succeed. Let's implement programs such as a managed consumption program for alcohol, establish supervised consumption sites for drugs in our capital. These models save lives. They help break the cycle of addiction and help save long-term care costs in the healthcare system. It's been proven in Canada and abroad. It's time we acted on that evidence, not get caught up in old prohibition debates. For these programs to work, we need to staff our services with wraparound support. We need to prioritize getting more addictions and mental health professionals in our communities. I also believe change looks like a justice system that's more and culturally relevant. There's a general agreement among my constituents that our justice system is not working. I believe the single biggest thing we can do to fix it is bring our focus to restorative justice. In the coming weeks, I will be pushing for several initiatives under that theme for inclusion in our mandate. Change looks like a government pushing to realize the true vision and intent of devolution. That means recognizing that the next step is devolving more in powers to Indigenous governments and communities. That starts with settling our land claims. I believe this is the single most powerful thing we can do to advance reconciliation and end the uncertainty in our economy. The next step is handing over the reins to some of these services and getting Indigenous governments the resources they need to deliver them directly to their constituents. I will make our region stronger and help our service delivery better reflect the reality of our clients. Change looks like transparency in government. As other jurisdictions accelerate toward greater transparency, we continue to foster a cloak of opacity. And we need to be advocates for a government that's transparent, effective, and responsive for the sake of our constituents. I heard no shortage of great ideas from within the public service when I was knocking doors. As elected officials, it is our job to bring those ideas to the top and make sure we can implement them. Colleagues, we have a lot of work ahead of us, and to be the change our constituents asked us to be. In getting to know each of you, I know none of you take this responsibility lightly. As we get down to the business of governing, governing, I have full confidence that we can be the most progressive, productive assembly this territory has seen in a long time. I look forward to working with each of you in the spirit of consensus and in the service of our constituents. Lastly, I want you to know that I will always be upfront and honest with you, and I ask that you do the same. As we commence this game of Survivor for our Cabinet Speaker and Premier, I can tell you that my vote is open for anyone. It is open for those whose priorities align with me. I will listen to you, and I ask that you do the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Member-elect Yellowknife North, Mr. Johnson. Next, we'll go to the Member-elect for Nahende, Mr. Thompson. Mr. Thompson, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. I would like to congratulate everyone here for all your hard work to be able to represent your riding and being the riding's voice. As well, I'd like to thank everyone who put their name forward to run for these same positions. It takes a lot of commitment to put your name forward for public office. I'm very excited and look forward to working with you all for the next 4 years. I'd like to personally thank the residents of the Nahende for allowing me into their homes and discussing what we need to work on for the next 4 years. Each of the 6 communities have similar and unique issues, and I will share some of them here today with you. I would like to thank them for allowing me to represent them for a second term. It is very humbling experience, and I would like to thank them from the bottom of my heart. To my team, family, thanks for all your support, advice, and encouragement as we move forward. Colleagues, this is a summary of what I heard we need to work on for the next 4 years. I'll try to keep it high level where possible, but for some of the returning colleagues, well, no, I do get into the weeds of it a bit sometimes. Working with Indigenous governments moving forward. The region would like to see the government of the Northwest Territories to come to some resolution with outstanding claims and processes, especially in the Nahende, Decho First Nation, and Akudeni. In speaking with regional leadership, we have not seen any improvement over the past 4 years, and it seems to be going backwards in some cases, especially in the Nahende. We need to build on relationships. We need to make it a point to sit down, listen to what the people have to say, and share. Hearing and listening to the people often require creativity in addressing concerns, issues, and challenges. Building relationships is a cornerstone to serving, which fosters respectful, trusting relationships, which then build healthier and more productive communities. Personally and professionally, integrity is built on trusting relationships. Trust and respect are not entitlement, it is earned. We need to do our utmost to be honest, forthright, and working through solutions to address their issues and concerns, and be authentic and transparent throughout the process. Delivering authentic services to people is not delivered in lip service or a box which can be checked off, or saying we consulted and are trying, when in fact we did not. Service to people is not a cookie-cut approach. Personal professional integrity needs to be the guiding post. I feel Indigenous government's process needs to be completed, which will create certainty for industry and investment in the North. Colleagues, when we need to work towards the well-being and self-reliance of our people and our communities. Valuing our knowledge keepers, as I've just recently found out, instead of calling them elders, by listening to them, paying a special attention to their traditional knowledge and meeting their needs for the care in the NWT. Continue to invest with partners infrastructure that enhances our well-being as individuals, such as long-term care facilities. Making homes more energy efficient, which would include increasing funding to Arctic Energy Alliance. The 18th Assembly has increased their budget to enhance the work that they're currently doing. I look at the success they've had in small communities such as Jean Marie River, where they help the band and homeowners become more energy efficient. This needs to be done for all communities. NWT Housing needs to work with small community governments to establish a year-round maintenance program for looking after the knowledge keepers in their homes. It's horrendous when you go into these people's homes and they don't have the support there and fix their homes. Work with the federal government to make a better use of the Nutrition North program for the communities. Each community should be able to access this program, especially in the north. Social services positions for elders. We talk about our elders, but we don't have a support system in place. We need to create a bill and positions to help them. They are our foundation, and we need to respect that. Increase home care positions in the communities. This will help create jobs and help look after our most vulnerable people. Relook at the senior fuel subsidy issue and add funds to it, instead of just giving the pot and just dividing it as we create new uses for it. Mackenzie Valley Highway, Road Wati, needs to be completed first and foremost. This will have an impact on all the smaller communities. And we have to understand this is how our residents move forward. Lease payments need to be reduced from 5% to 3%. I know we started out at 10% last sitting, and we got to 5%, but we need to go to 3%. We need to reduce the cost of living for all residents. When we're looking at elders and they're sitting there having to pay over $3,000 for a home, for the lease payments, not cool. So we need to work on that to reduce that. Equity lease issues need to be resolved in the next 4 years. This has been ongoing, and as for some people, my colleagues have heard, I spoke up in this House about this. In my riding it's 26, and my colleagues from the Deschaux is 46. People are being put into a situation where the government's not honoring their commitment. Highway 1 needs to be completed, and what I mean by that, chip sealing, from Fort Providence all the way to Wrigley. I understand the struggles that some of the bigger centers have with their highways, but come drive down our highway. See what gravel roads are like. And I have to give credit to the staff and the contractors that look after those highways. They do a great job with what they're given. But we need to fix this. We need to complete the chip sealing process on that road. We need to enhance that because there's some opportunities now happening in the Deschaux and in the Hendick. And we need to help make sure the infrastructure is there so that the residents can benefit from it. Colleagues, we need to respond to the NW2 residents for a safe and affordable housing and address the homeless issue. Public housing units have a long waiting list and no new infrastructure occurring. When you see new buildings built, old buildings get torn down. We need to use those buildings to help our homelessness situation. We need to work with the federal government to access Indigenous housing funding for Indigenous governments. Not the territorial government, but Indigenous governments. We need to work with local governments to come up with creative ways to address housing issues. They can be creative and develop housing solutions for their residents with this funding. They have the answers, and let's work with them. We need to work on elder housing so that their homes are enhanced and maintained to allow the elders to age in place. Elders sometimes do not, or a lot of times do not want to leave their home community. So we need to ensure we give them that opportunity. For the smaller communities, we need to build fourplexes for elders that can be taken care of in the comfort of their own home communities. They're the knowledge keepers. We hear it. They're the ones that hold the history and the culture. And we need to respect them. And we need to build these homes in there. Especially for elders that are stage 1 and stage 2 care. Stage 3 to 5, we need medical services, and we don't have that presently for that. So we need to understand that. Making homes more energy efficient, which includes funding to the did I already say that? The Energy Alliance system. The Assembly increased the, okay, sorry, I already said that one. Oh, sorry. I double-spaced it on both sides, so my apologies. For our debt being we have to be realistic. Our debt is $1.1 billion, and it's getting closer to our debt ceiling of $1.3 billion. This is our reality, so we need to do things differently. I heard from the residents they would like to see the finance minister reach out to Northerners to hear their concerns and their ideas on how to improve the GNWT economy and how to utilize the budget as best we can. This will allow us to develop creativity in spending the $1.9 billion. Departments need to do zero-based budgeting to eliminate redundancies, duplications of services in the system. The 19 members of the Legislative Assembly need to implement a can-do approach with the understanding that we are working for the residents of the Northwest Territories. In true consensus government, it is about working together for the benefit of our residents. Contracts need to be awarded to northern contractors for the economy to grow and flourish in the north. Northern contractors provide employment for northerners and skill development. These contractors are not only invested in local economy, but in our communities. As many of our contractors are residents themselves, in other words, we need to fix the Business Incentive Program, formerly known as BIP. This program used to be used on all contracts, but somehow it was decided that it would be capped. Colleagues, we see large contracts going south with limited benefits to northerners. One example was the project on Highway Number 1. The Southern Company was awarded a contract for roughly $14.5 million. And we did not see very much left behind. So we saved a little bit of money on the contract, but what was the impact on the other areas? Again, it's about the residents. We need to develop an infrastructure and economy in a way that we can support a positive future for our people and our land. We need creative ways to enhance tourism outside the larger centres. Northerners offer a rich and diverse cultural and traditional perspective and experience, coupled with incredible untouched landscape that few people have the pleasure of enjoying. Unfortunately, larger centres are only place many of our tourists are able to visit to the undeveloped because of the undeveloped northern tourism industry. Moving forward, I'd like to see the GNWT develop more green projects such as geothermal, LNG, solar, and other creative ways to reduce the demand on diesel. It is essentially about working with the community to come up with a plan that meets their needs, as well as using modern technology to enhance existing systems we currently have in place. We have a perfect example of a community in Fort Providence where SSI Energy has developed a system using modern technology to reduce the use of diesel fuel, utilizing the waste heat for their business. This is an idea that reduces their cost. We need to work with these type of innovators. I believe that utilization of green energy projects would enhance the local economy. If you look at geothermal, not only does it operate the power plant, but the heat can be used to heat buildings and greenhouses where we can grow our own food. This creates more employment opportunities, careers, lowers the cost of living in the community, and make the community more self-reliant. Last Assembly, we saw an increase in Small Community Employment Fund, which saw the new employment opportunities in the smaller communities. However, it is not enough. We need to develop strategic spending which will stimulate employment opportunities such as home care, special projects which are driven by the communities, work like access roads and fire breaks, which will help stimulate their economy. It is about diversifying and improving economy opportunities to encourage community self-reliance and provide local employment through traditional industries such as arts, culture, small businesses, mining, fishing, and tourism, as I mentioned before. It's about strategically spending in the region, working with the local governments on projects that will get people to work and be productive citizens. By working on addressing smaller communities, it helps the regional centers and it helps the city of Yellowknife. It's all coaching and elegy. You work on your weakest part of it, it makes the whole team better. And by doing that, working with the small communities, it does help enhance this. Colleagues, we need to provide education and training that provides children, youth, and adult learners for a positive contribution to society and meaningful employment. We need to review and address the education funding formula we are using. It needs to be fixed to ensure all divisional education councils, school staffs have have the necessary tools and funding in place to help our students. Divisional boards should not have to look for almost 30% of their operational budgets outside the department, and this is what's happening in the Date Show. I'd have to personally thank the staff for doing an amazing job, the divisional staff and teachers, being able to do what they're doing with the resources they have. I've been very fortunate. My children and myself have been through this education system. It is an amazing system, but it needs to be fixed in certain areas. We need to put our students and communities first by offering local skills and trades training that will reduce our needs for important skilled laborers. We need to promote and stress trades and apprenticeships. We need to develop a physical literacy strategy for the schools and communities. We need to focus on prevention and people's well-being. We are behind the rest of Canada in this area. Being respectful of the time, I'll try to summarize some of the remaining ideas that I've heard for the past 4 years on the campaign trail. We need to finally address the municipal infrastructure shortfall. We need to start reducing the gap by at least $3.3 million a year for the next 4 years. This will help municipalities start addressing their concerns. As part of the process, we need to work with the municipalities to develop a capital plan that is realistic and that they are aware of O&M costs to these new facilities. The Department of Municipal Community Affairs needs to work with the federal government to develop an ability for smaller communities, especially the designated authorities, to use the CIP and gas tax funding for community projects that they need and maybe be part of, and maybe a part of the funding to help run the facility and program staff. We need to explain that every facility being built has an O&M cost, and it comes down that they have limited funds that they receive from the federal government and territorial government. They do not have the ability to raise funds through taxation like some of the bigger centers. We need to continue to strengthen our human resource capacity across the public service. We need to build up their skills so that they can move up the corporate ladder should they wish. We need Northerners in positions that is looking after Northerners for Northerners, and we need to understand the importance of that. We need to have a budget line for a department for summer students, and we need to have the ability to share with our municipal governments to give our youth the opportunity to get meaningful employment in the summertime to help them get positive work and experience and funding to go back to school. As well, this would be another way of supporting our youth and our future. Medical travel policy needs to be reviewed. $18 a day for meals isn't right. Tell me where you can get a good meal for $18. You can go to McDonald's maybe. And these are people that are going on medical travel, and we're not looking after them properly. We also need to look at the time about the opportunity for people to drive instead of medical flights. We also got to look at non-medical travel escorts and the work that they do, because they sometimes are non-member family members that are stepping up to look after our sick and elderly. Finally, decentralization needs to be looked at. There are positions that should be in the region, but they are in headquarters. This puts an additional barrier to the government's operation and slows down process. There are several examples of this form, and I have seen them in the past few years. As well, I believe modern technology in place, there are positions out there that can be decentralized. Each community in the entity does have a list of things we need to work on, but with everybody's permission here, I would like to be able to submit the list for the hand search and have it deemed as read. In closing, I would like to thank my former colleagues from the 18th Assembly. Your help, your assistance, and your support was greatly appreciated. I've learned a lot from them. The scary thing is, I've gone from being a rookie to a knowledge keeper in 4 short years. It is exciting and scary at the same time. Thank you, my colleagues.
Deeming a portion of your speech read, that's a procedural trick from a wily veteran, but we will make it so, Mr. Thompson. Colleagues, next we have the member-elect for Nunatput, Mr. Jacobson. The floor is yours, Mr. Jacobson.
Thank you, Mr. Mercer. I'd like to thank the good Lord for making a way for me to represent my people here at the Legislative Assembly. I'd like to thank all the people in my riding that put the trust in me to be here to represent them. In my 1 month of door knocking and home visits and stuff like that to the communities, the problems and the priorities I have for Nunatput, identifying housing solutions and our housing problems and shortages in our communities, an advocate for health and social impacts with our people that are traveling with escorts, and for the families that are not able to afford travel when somebody's sick in a hospital from our communities. Education, our post-secondary education, social passing has to stop. It's a rippling effect right through our government and right through the system. Assure and monitor responsible resource development. Monitor and secure viable climate change, shoreline erosion, and safe, responsible transportation services. Wildlife and traditional land management, working with our Inner Regional Corporation and our local governments. Culture and traditional resources. Work together to support and maintain good working relationships with local community governments. My riding has many issues. We're seeking effects from climate change. We live it every day. Change is sooner than anyone else impacting our lives who live in Nunatput. Tuktoyaktuk shoreline is falling into the ocean and people are having to move. But, Mr. Clerk, we're not going to move. I'm going to make sure the people that are staying on the north side of the community is going to stay in their homes, and this government's going to make a way to fix that shoreline. From the few decades of changing weather means hunters entrust the ice, can't get much for our families. The barges are delayed, meaning we can't build homes, stock up on our food plan for the winter. Cost of living is higher in Nunatput than anywhere else in this territory. It keeps going up and up. We have to work with our local stores to provide with the federal government to provide proper pricing and proper help for the smaller communities on the coast. We need to know our problems. We need to stop studying them and start acting on it. We need to help our people work. The oil and gas moratorium is hurting our communities in the whole Delta. There's nothing going on up there. We need work. We have to work with our federal government to get this moratorium lifted with the Inner Regional Corporation and to be able to get to our resources, because we're resource rich and cash poor. The Beaufort Delta is using up to reduce the cost of power and heating in our communities right now. It's getting to the federal government and getting it sorted out for the whole region. Nothing's happening. To work with the federal government to get our gas to market. We need safe and reliable transportation services in our communities. Fuel costs and sending up clean fuel. So we're not in a situation that we're in right now for the last 2 years. You have 9 months of winter, that's 9 months of proper planning that you could do, and 4 months of shipping. That has to get sorted out. It affects us when we're traveling on the land, when we're trying to, it's costing us more and more to go further. So the gas prices, that has to change also. We know the highway to Tuk almost seen 8,000 tourists drove that road this year alone, but there's nothing for them to do. Our government is downloading on the local community government, the Hamlet of Tuk, to provide services that they should be providing where they provide everywhere in the Northwest Territory. But where we stand, coming out of O&M from the Hamlet of Tuk, it's not right. That's got to stop. Our local economies have to grow. People are smart to start our small businesses. When they come into the community, all they do is like a fishbowl. They go around, they drive, and they head back to Inuvik, and they stay in Inuvik. We're trying to make small businesses be able to create jobs and employment and to work together to get that sorted out with our government. Our housing, the housing issues that we have in our riding, big theme. We have young families that are growing. I had 24 graduates this year in Tuck. Where are they going to go? Young families. We have no housing. We have to get CMHC and the federal government on side to get increases in the housing for the per community per capita. We get $32,000 per person per year. Not all of it's being distributed properly. It's got to be distributed across the territory. That housing is the biggest concern for me. We got mold. We got people overcrowding. You get water once a week or twice a week in some houses, a family of 10. We have to change. Things got to change. 19th Assembly's change. Our housing issues to make it easier for house to be built. Our education. Social passing has to stop. Has a rippling effect right across the territory, has a rippling effect from K to 12. We have to work with our community DEAs to work and get that done. I was sitting on a DEA for the last 3 years. I've seen how the rippling effect happens, the social passing across the territory. I always say, what's good for Yellowknife is good for Nunavut. We provide the courses, for the programs that we need for education. We need to have our own social workers, our teachers, our nurses. Those positions need to be filled by our own people. We say we're so good at the start at saying, okay, let's get them trained up. Then when they're trained, they can get hired. That's got to stop. The healthcare system, big concern in my riding. People are having to leave our medical appointments on a day's notice sometimes, not even given notice, and they should be properly told when they're traveling. And it's a big thing, because when you're leaving coastal communities, you have to leave 1 or 2 days early. And it's the same thing coming back. You're going for one appointment, it's costing you 6 days of your life. Medical travel from Inuvik to Yellowknife or Edmonton, elders and escorts, that has to get fixed and streamlined. So when you're calling the minister, something's going to get done that day, approval. We shouldn't put our elders in that situation where they're stressed out on what they're having to deal with already. We're giving them more stress. That's not right. The appointments and the aftercare that we're giving them when they travel for cancer, all these treatments, they got to get properly treated. Proper follow-up. We need to deal with one of the biggest concerns that I have too, and I've been hearing more and more. We need more programming for men, women, and our youth in our communities. Not just Band-Aid solutions. We need a men's night or ladies' night, or something where they're gathering together, or some kind of programming that they could go, or a number that they could call anytime to get help. Our youth are left behind. Never hear nothing on youth. Our youth are for our sporting events. We're lucky in Tuck. You could drive out on the road. You go try to fly out of the community of Sax Harbor or Polituck. You could probably buy 3 tickets from Yellowknife to Edmonton with 1 trip from those communities. Shame on us. We got to fix it. Youth are our future in our territory. We need places for treatment, and it's not got to be lip service. The 19th Assembly's got to get treatment for our people in our communities. We need that. We have drug and alcohol addictions. We got stronger drugs coming into the communities. We have to work with that and let the people know. Let them know what happens at the the effects, the side effects that they have to deal with. On the land, treatment centers, what they had in the 17th Assembly that we did try, you know, and it just put off to the wayside. No, we're going to send them south. You can't send them south and think they're going to get fixed when they come home. They got to be fixed. We got to take care of our own people. The people that we need a drug and alcohol center in the territory. We need to work with regional governments for the land management and harvesting for our grandchildren. We'll stay connected with our past and working with our local community governments. That's the biggest one. We've been hearing it the last couple of days. We have to work with government, our local governments. They were here first. The support and build solutions and create working together, open-handed approach. We need to work with all levels and support them. I have a lot of issues for Nunavut. I'm here to advocate for my riding for Nunavut, and I'm here to do the job for the Northwest Territories. It's an honor for me to be here. This is my third term coming up right now. I'm here to get things done, and I look forward to working with all of you to getting all the issues that we have to work together to get done for our great territory of Northwest Territories. I'd like to thank my wife for your support, and blessed to have you. And I just want to say, I always used to have little slogans. Live the present, honor the past, create the future. Let this 19th Assembly be remembered as getting the job done for the people. Thank you.
Thank you, Member-elect Nunavut, Mr. Jacobson. Members-elect, I think we have time for one more before we break for lunch. And I'll turn the floor over then to the member-elect for Range Lake, Ms. Cochran.
Thank you. Colleagues, I'm going to begin by thanking the constituents of Range Lake for re-electing me as your MLA. I also want to acknowledge my incredible campaign team. Without them, I wouldn't be here today. And I want to officially congratulate every member-elect in the House today. Good job. We're all here. We've got a lot of work to do. Welcome. This is a historical assembly in that for the first time in the history of the Northwest Territories, we have a gender-balanced assembly. Women in my riding talked of the need to increase the number of women in leadership, and we have accomplished this within the Legislative Assembly. But the work is not finished. Women still face glass ceilings in many areas, but we're seeing a change in societal expectations for women, and I'm excited to see what this coming 4 years will bring. During my door knocking, people in masses expressed their concerns for the economy and the cost of living. They talked about the need to diversify and build on our tourism potential and the economic potential of continuing with the Polytech University. But the majority of the people and businesses in my riding talked about the need to invest more in our mineral resources sector and finish the land claims, the outstanding land claims, to be able to move forward. We know we're in a downturn in the mineral resources sector. We talk about the end of life of our diamond mines, but if we don't start investing now, we're not looking at 10 to 15 years to the end of our main economic driver. We're talking about many, many more years till we see an increase in this sector. Mines are not just suddenly found by explorers out looking. It takes many years from the time a prospector finds a potential site till the mines are actually built and in operation. Colleagues, we don't have time to wait anymore. We need to invest now to ensure that in 15 years we have other opportunities to support our residents. The last Assembly passed the Mineral Resources Act, and I believe we need to make the development of the regulations for this act an immediate priority for this government. The development of these regulations is critical for the mining industry, the government of the Northwest Territories, Indigenous governments, and many of our businesses and residents. We need to work closely with all stakeholders to ensure the regulations meet the needs of all concerned parties. Constituents also talked about the need to strengthen our education system, perhaps more so because I'm still the education minister. But colleagues, they are right. What's the use of improving our economy if we don't have northern people with the skills to access the employment opportunities? As well, countries who have invested heavily in education are seeing their economy increase with the production of plumbers, carpenters, nurses, lawyers, entrepreneurs, etc. Social issues related to poverty are also lowered as more people have the skills to get higher paid employment, which in turn leads to less people on income support and less need for housing, public housing. To address the needs within our education system, we also need to increase our parental and family support. Almost half of our children in the Northwest Territories are not developmentally ready when they enter school, and this is not okay. We need a higher focus on pre- and postnatal education and supports so that new parents, young parents, and struggling parents have the supports to help them raise their children to be the best they can be. Once we get our children to the school doors, we need to have appropriate educational supports for them. Schools cannot be allowed to continue to try to address the increasing needs of students with the same or less funding. The funding formula in itself will need to be reviewed, as the current funding formula leaves the potential for schools to fight between themselves for students, because the current funding is allocated based on numbers. We need to adequately fund our schools so they can focus on quality education versus focusing on making sure they have enough students to fund their costs. Strengthening our JK to 12 cannot be done by the GNWT alone. We need to work closer with school boards and the Northwest Territories Teachers Association if we're going to get this right and get the buy-in needed to succeed. We also have huge needs in our post-secondary. Yellowknife needs a campus, as the current rented one is bursting at the seams. Fort Smith and Inuvik have beautiful campuses, but there's a need for adequate student accommodations in those communities. The government of the Northwest Territories will need to work diligently with our federal counterparts to access funding to support the expansion of our post-secondary facilities. Colleagues, the last Assembly committed to 3 strong campuses and 3 strong communities, and we need to build on the programming and services at each of the campuses. But we can't forget our smallest communities. We currently have 21 community learning centers in communities that also need to be included in the development of our post-secondary. We need to invest in technology and build on our community learning centers so students who are not able to travel can still access some post-secondary courses. We're implementing the Northern Distance Learning Program into our high schools to address the higher grade levels, and it's working, with our most northern schools now graduating students who have been accepted immediately into post-secondary programs without having to do the upgrading. This program's working within our high schools, so we need to expand it to our post-secondary. Colleagues, I clearly heard from over 100 students at the 3 campuses that they wanted to maintain their post-secondary within their own communities. And if we're going to address the educational needs of students, we need to have every community in mind as we continue this journey. Another major concern I heard from my constituents is the desperate need within the healthcare system. I've heard from many, many healthcare professionals that they're overworked due to the serious staffing shortages, some even crying as they shared their stories of desperation. Many feel their voices are not respected, and some say that they've literally been silenced by the bureaucracy. This is not okay. All employees and all residents need to have an opportunity to share what they think is working, what is not, and what needs to change. Within my riding, there's a feeling that we're at a crisis point, and this needs to be addressed immediately. We need to hear the concerns of staff and work diligently on a recruitment and retention strategy that focuses on meeting our immediate needs for staffing, acknowledging the current workers who are not feeling appreciated, and increase our training of northern workers able to take on our healthcare occupations. The last major issue that was raised by many residents was the need to continue to address the homelessness situation in Yellowknife. To address this, though, we need to increase the number of homes and shelters outside of Yellowknife, as the majority of homeless people are from the communities. This is not to keep them out of our capital. This is because people who are struggling and decide to make positive changes to their lives have a better chance for success if they have healthy friends and family close by. We also need to continue to provide a continuum of care, from housing first, transitional and semi-independent housing, and emergency shelters. No one model fits all, and we need to try to address the needs of all. Finally, we need to address the pain that many people live with every day in their lives. This means an increase in mental health and addiction support in the Northwest Territories, both mainstream programs and within an Indigenous lens as well. Colleagues, I can go on. People who know me know I can go on a long time. But the one thing I did stress in my campaign trail is the need to have less priorities for this Assembly so we can ensure that we are properly addressing the concerns. Within this new Assembly, the priorities I personally would like to see include the needs and financial resources to our education system, a strong recruitment, retention plan for needed professionals in all fields, and a continued focus on providing adequate housing for the residents of the Northwest Territories. Merci.
Thank you, Member-elect for Range Lake, Ms. Cochrane. That brings us almost immediately to 12 noon. We will now take a break for lunch and reconvene at 1 p.m. Thank you, Members-elect. We are recessed until 1.